Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Jenkins. I'm the Standard Plans Publication Engineer. I'm going to go over some indexes, mainly the drainage indexes, but I do have a few other miscellaneous indexes I'll be going over today. The first index I want to go over to start with is the Structure Bottoms Index, 425010. This is a minor change, but it's a change that industry has been requesting of us for the past at least a couple of years. It's historically come back to our alternate B bottom only allowed for a square riser in the past indexes. Well, we want to allow for the 4-foot diameter round riser as well. So we've gone through and added the 4-foot option. You can see here that we added it in the top detail and the bottom. It's not a big change, but it is something the industry has been asking us for a couple years. Big task for me this past year is the redevelopment of the in-treatments and miscellaneous drainage indexes. These indexes, you can see listed here, are mainly the 430 series and then the miscellaneous drainage series, the trench drain, under drain, etc. The main task here was going through and redrawing the details, combining tables, adding, removing sheets, fixing scales on the details, eliminating design notes, payment notes. I'm going to go through basically what the main factors we were looking at. One of the first things we were looking at was the whether it was design criteria or construction information for contractors. There's multiple different design requirements actually. If the design criteria was directly related to the index, the details in the index, then it really needs to be in the standard plans instructions, SPI. Trick here was not many of the drainage indexes have SPI, so we went through and created an SPI for each of the indexes. Then we determined the design criteria, whether it should be an SPI or if it should be in the drainage manual or the drainage design guide. The design information here is more directed for the engineer to use, maybe for something special in the plans, or if it's just design in general. Also went through and deleted duplicate information. For instance, if there was a design note in the standard plans and it was already in the drainage manual, we just deleted it from the standard plans. Also went through the construction requirements. A lot of the notes in the plans or the standard plans were dealing with material information. Really, we'd like for those type of notes to be in the standard specifications. So we went through and added those mainly to the 430 standard specification. There was also a lot of payment information. This could also be added to the standard specification or the basis of estimate. So now I'm going to go through a few of the specific drainage standard plans that we redeveloped this last year. Not all of them, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. It's more of just going over some of the general concepts that we looked at with this redevelopment. The first index I want to look at is the miscellaneous drainage details, 430001. This index, we actually went from 3 total sheets to 6 sheets. That's basically because there was a lot of clutter on this index, and there's a lot of information that's useful, but we wanted to kind of group the details and notes together. So we went through, and now all the sheets have a sheet title, as you can see. We also created a table of contents for the new indexes, or the indexes, and we also created notes. In general, the general notes are on the first page of every index. These notes are actually sheet-specific notes because there aren't any general notes for this index. And like I said before, we wanted to group the details together for clarity. So we grouped the light details together. For this case, it was the round concrete pipe joint details, and there were specific notes for these details. So we have these notes listed here. This isn't a general note, it's just for those details. Same thing here. And you can see how much cleaner it looks with the new index compared to what we had before. Not only do we add sheets. In this case, we actually deleted an entire sheet from the index. When we went through this information, we determined that this information really should be in the drainage manual. And in fact, some of it was in the drainage manual and the drainage design guide. So we added the information that wasn't there, edited what was there. And then in some cases, like this detail here, this information is covered in the standard junction box, so it's not really needed as a special detail. We also created tables to minimize callouts. Here you can see that there's a long leader, a leader with a note that's kind of cumbersome. I mean, it's kind of hard to understand. There's two notes here. They're both covered here in the detail, but we decided that it'd probably be easier if we just created a table for that. Makes it a little easier to follow. It's a little more clear, and it actually just looks better. The next index I'm going to cover and talk about a little bit is the cross drain mitered in section 430.021. We're going over the cross drain mitered in section here, but this really just applies to the mitered in sections in general. The first thing we did is, like I mentioned before, we wanted to move the general notes to sheet 1. You can see here that the previous index has the general notes on sheet 6 of 6. So we went through and marked up the sheets, and we did this with all the drainage indexes, moved the general notes to sheet 1 like I talked about before. We also created general notes from repetitive sheet notes. In this case, we had the note on saddle slope, so it was on multiple sheets in the actual index. So we went through, created a general note, so we were able to remove the repetitive notes in the same index. Here's what the new sheet 1 looks like in the 430.021. We now have the general notes. We have that saddle slope note that I talked about, have table of contents, sheet title, etc. Oh, also, and I wanted to mention that we did make an isometric view of all the indexes that it made sense. This is something to try to help the users to understand what we're looking at in each index. This is, like I mentioned before, we also went through and wanted to look at the design notes. Design notes really shouldn't be in the standard plans indexes. So we went through and determined whether it should be moved into SBI or the drainage manual. And you can see now we actually just deleted those design notes from here and actually moved them to the drainage manual. We also went through and created tables from notes like I talked about. You can see this note was kind of hidden in the detail. So we went through, in this case, and created a small table to make it a lot easier to understand. This is something I know I've mentioned this twice, but I want to make it clear that this is the type of thing we were doing with the redevelopment here, was to try to make things clear and easier to follow. This is, for consistency, the planned quantity we measure from the station and offset point for all in treatments now. This is with cross drain or with mitered in sections in general. Previously, you had to go through, and it was a little harder to do the planned quantity because you had to actually, now when you insert the detail, the pipe length will be to the station offset of the mitered in section. We went through and made this change in the standard specification 430. So planned quantity will be determined from the inside wall of the structure and from station offset location for in treatments, as shown in plans. We also created details from notes. This note here, concrete slab shall be deepened to form bridge across crown of pipe. See, that note really is not easy to understand. So we wanted to go in and actually create a detail to show exactly what we're talking about here. And to see the detail here, it actually shows what we want instead of trying to describe it in a note. And we did this in other places as well. The next index I'm going to talk about is the 430.030 straight concrete end walls. Once again, this is not really just specifically to this index. I just picked this index to go over, but it really applies to all straight concrete end walls. The thing with the straight concrete end walls was there was a lot of pavement information in the notes. So we want to go through and move this information to the BOE and to the specifications. Went through and cleaned it up, and you can see that a lot of the notes were deleted here. It makes it a lot easier to follow. The main thing with the straight concrete end walls, as I wanted to bring up here, was that previously they were all paid for. The winged walls, the straight concrete end walls, and the larger U-type concrete end walls were paid for per cubic yards of concrete. So we went through and made a change to the standard specification 430 and the current basis of estimate, and made it now where they're all paid for in a per each situation, just like the mitered end section, the flared end sections. This is something the industry was pushing as well, and they were very happy to find out we were going to finally make this change. Next index I want to look at is the 436-001 trench drain. This index had a lot of design notes. So we actually went through on this index and created a new section in the drainage manual. Not only did we add to it, we actually created a section because there was enough information that deserved a new section in the drainage manual. And we also went through and reorganized the details. Previously, we had the type 2 to type 1 trench drains mixed in together, and we wanted to make sure that it was a little easier to understand. So we went through, and here's the new index. We have our isometric view here. We have a lot less notes because most of the notes were design notes. We have a table of contents. Here's the type 1 trench drains, and grouped with the sheet specific notes. And now we have the type 2 trench drains on its own sheet with its own notes. The next index we're going to look at is the technical warnings and sidewalk curb ramps, 522-002. This change is something that come to us from one of our CEIs. I mean, it was brought to our attention that the general note 2 stating that grade breaks at the top and bottom of ramps must be parallel to each other and perpendicular to the direction of the ramp slope. This note creates a situation that doesn't work. This note would result in the front of a sidewalk and back of sidewalk transition links not being equal, creating warping within the curb ramp transition areas and quick changes in the cross slope direction. So we talked about this, we thought about it, and we actually decided just to delete this note because we didn't want to create a situation that's not constructible or not usable. So here we've deleted that note too and renumbered the general notes. The next index I want to look at and talk about is the index 830-T01. It's the railroad grade crossing. This change was actually requested of us from our District 2 Railroad and Design Office. And the issue here is that the shoulder in the detail called out here, or shown here, is not normally asphalt, even though that's the only thing that's shown in the detail. D2 actually had pictures of 19 locations that were recently rebuilt, and concrete was used on each location. So we went through with the new index, added the option as asphalt or concrete instead of just having asphalt, so we could be more consistent with what's going in the field. All right, and if you have any questions, just submit them.
Thanks, and have a great day.